Rishi Sunak, thank you very much for being on the show and talking to me the day after your spring statement. Look, the big headline of it obviously was that living standards are going to fall to their lowest level in over 6 decades. Let's just take that in, since the 1950s. But millions of people will have been watching your statement, they're reading the headlines, and they're very stressed and they're very anxious. Are you?
Yeah, I'm anxious on their behalf, and I know that it's the number one concern that people have right now. Families are struggling with the rising cost of lots of things, and that's why in the spring statement I wanted to make sure that we demonstrated we were on people's side, and we announced a tax plan that will deliver the biggest net cut to personal taxes in
2 years' time.
well, in quarter of a century taken together.
Yeah.
But I guess taking a step back, I've always tried to be honest with people. I can't protect them from absolutely everything that we face, but where we can make a difference, we will. And I'm confident that the plan yesterday will do that.
But you actually, during COVID, judged the public mood very well, and you did come in behind people. You're not really doing that now, really. I mean, what you've just talked to me about is in this unprecedented moment of inflation at a 4-decade high, living standards falling to the lowest levels in this year since the 1950s. It is unprecedented, and you haven't really been able to respond in a way that perhaps people need. Is that because you just simply cannot do that? Or do you acknowledge that you might have misjudged the moment, that people feel abandoned?
Well, I think the right thing to remember is the context, and they're very different situations. What we were grappling with over the last couple of years was a pandemic where the government forcibly shut down the country and the economy. That's different to dealing with global inflationary forces, which we're not alone in facing. You know, the US actually seeing higher inflation than we are right now, Europe similar, and the response to different economic situations is necessarily different. And actually I think what we've done is substantial. If you take together £9 billion to help people with energy bills announced last month, the significant tax cuts that we announced yesterday, they will all help. But of course, they can't mitigate all the difficulties that high inflation is causing. No chancellor could do that.
It's like bringing a pea shooter to a gunfight, isn't it? I mean, the level of support is only scratching the surface of the actual reality of people's lives. You do acknowledge that. You can make an argument about you're limited in what you can do, but at least acknowledge that the pain people are going to feel is real, and that as a government you cannot really offset it.
Oh gosh, I've been completely honest about that, and I've always said that no government can fully offset the impact of inflation running at those levels. That's the same here as it is in any other country. You're absolutely right, and I haven't shied away from being honest with people about that. It is impossible to fully protect people against some of these things, and of course our actions to sanction Putin, as I said yesterday and as have others, they're not cost-free for us here at home.
I'm going to bring you to 2 specifics which I wanted to ask you about. One was on energy bills. It seems to me that you are going to have to put in additional support in the coming months. Do you accept that that is likely?
So we don't know what's going to happen in October. It's really too early to know what will happen then. And the energy prices are moving around so wildly that I don't want people to sit here right now and think, gosh, it's going up by this much or not going up. We don't know. The forecasts move around by the day.
You held money back. You held money that you could use back, it seemed to me yesterday, in order to give you a cushion to make more interventions. Is that fair?
Well, I think in general I've always been responsive to the situation, and I will continue to be responsive to the situation.
Do you acknowledge about the absolute poverty figures, and doesn't that bother you, the idea that under your leadership 500,000 children are going to go into absolute poverty? It's the biggest figure, according to the Resolution Foundation, outside a recession.
Well, I mean, what we do know is the track record, because there's lots of projections and speculation about the future, but the track record shows that over the last 10 years, since we've had Conservative governments in charge, the number of people living in poverty has actually declined by about 1.3 million people. That includes 300,000 children from memory. So actually that's a record that I'm proud of. Now, obviously a lot of that happened before I was in post, but the actions I've taken over the past couple of years have ensured that we have protected those on the lowest incomes the most.
I understand you can say about the problems of the economy and inflation are things out of your control about global inflation, but to kind of deny the fact that think tanks that look at this stuff warn about inflationary pressure putting people into poverty and sort of challenging that. I find it's like being a bit gaslighted, to be honest.
But I'm not denying for 1 second that inflation is difficult. Of course it's difficult, and it's most difficult for those on lower incomes.
And my point is you could have given more support to low incomes, and you chose to target tax, and that's your decision as Chancellor, but just acknowledge that you chose to target your tax cuts in a different way.
I actually chose to target them specifically in a way that is beneficial for those on low and middle incomes. And actually, you quoted lots of think tanks. They also said that the best way to help those on low incomes through the tax system is to raise national insurance thresholds. It is the policy that delivers the most benefit.
I do want to ask you a little bit about you and your values, and picking up on your values. Your parents emigrated here in the 1960s from East Africa. Your father a GP, your mother a pharmacist. They opened a chemist, and then they sent you to one of the best public boarding schools in the country, to Winchester, and now you are the Chancellor. They were very ambitious for you, clearly.
You know, I'm sitting here talking to you, the product of lots of people's sacrifice, hard work and kindness, and started with my grandparents actually, who emigrated together with my parents. And you're absolutely right about my parents. For them, education is everything. They thought that was the best way they could help provide a better life for me and my younger brother and sister. So for them, that was the focus of their hard work, was to provide that opportunity for us. And that's ultimately what motivates me today. It's why I'm in politics. It's why I do this job. It's to try and spread as much of the opportunities that I was really fortunate to enjoy to as many people as possible. And education for me is one of the best ways we can do that as a country.
I wonder what it must have been like for you going from the background you had into the upper middle classes of British society, go into this public school, this one of the best in the country, where you met so many people from the upper echelons of society. What was that comfortable, or was it tough for you, or was it something in between?
You know, it was an amazing opportunity, is what it was.
Did you feel like you were out of place?
No, I mean, I was really lucky to have that opportunity. It was something that was really extraordinary. It certainly put my life on a different trajectory. As I said, it's part of the reason I'm sitting here, and I'm really grateful to have had that opportunity. And I look back on that time. It's helped make me who I am as a person, and I'm sure it helps me do the job in the way that I do it. And it confirms to me that education is one of the best tools at our disposal in politics to spread opportunity, and that's actually just something that the values that I was brought up with, and now we have a chance to make sure in practice we implement that.
I sort of asked because I just wondered, did you feel out of place? Did it feel like a world you didn't belong in, or did you just adapt?
Well, I probably just adapted because I'm sitting here talking to you. So
yeah, you probably did okay.
But it's but I think we have an amazing country that is brilliant at integrating people from lots of different backgrounds into society, and that's a very special thing about our country. It's always been an open, tolerant, welcoming country, and I think if people are prepared to work hard and integrate, then they're always been warmly accepted, and that's what I've always felt.
But you have talked about racism, suffering racism, and feeling very stung by that. So it wasn't always an opening, and there were points in your life.
Oh gosh, of course there were. Yes, and of course I experienced that growing up. And I think actually, now that when I think about what's happened to the country, and I think I said it at the same time, I think some of the things that I experienced as a kid growing up, probably you would much more unlikely to see now, and that's a sign of the progress that we've made as a country.
With your girls, do you worry about it for them, about them experience racism, or you think the country's changed?
No, so I usually find if I don't, actually, you're probably right, in a way that I bet my parents probably did worry about it a bit.
Yeah.
Not that I've talked to them explicitly about it. I don't worry about it for my girls, and that probably tells you a sign of the
that's good.
Progress that we've made.
That's a good thing.
I think it is. As I said, and we have always been, there's always improvement. Of course there's always room for improvement. It'd be wrong to pretend that there isn't. But I generally feel really proud of the way that our country does this. I think it does it better than most.
And I've got two more things to ask you, just on your background. So you were very successful, you are very successful. You went to Oxford, then you went into the city, you worked in finance in a hedge fund. You yourself you were a self-made millionaire, you became a millionaire. You then married a multi-millionaire, one of the wealthiest women in Britain, whose father's a billionaire. you kind of, it struck me that you went from being sort of part of the upper middle classes of Britain to almost being part of a global elite. How did that affect your outlook on life?
Well, I think actually the experience I've had of living and working abroad, and particularly I studied in California in Silicon Valley.
And you still have a home there, don't you?
Yeah, I still, and I worked there for many years, and actually my kids were born there. That's actually been really helpful, because I think one thing that policymakers and people in my job need to do is to have a global outlook. That we need to make sure that Britain can compete.
Absolutely. So that's really good in terms of global outlook and business and looking also at Silicon Valley. How do you keep it real? Yeah, you're a really wealthy man. How do you keep it real? Do you take a bus? Do you go to the supermarket?
Of course I go to the supermarket, and whether there's lots in Northallerton where we live in North Yorkshire, and Teesside is on my back door. So before, like if my kids we're at the cinema at the weekend, we're in Darlington, we're in Stockton, we're at the Clip and Climb there. Those are the kind of things that I'm doing on the rare chances I have some time off with my kids. And you can see that in the policies we put in place, right? As a Northern Chancellor, I want to make sure that people feel the benefits of levelling up everywhere. I made a decision to put the new Treasury office in Darlington. We've created a free port in Teesside, which is bringing jobs and investment to the area. And again, because of my constituents, because of that perspective, like all MPs, I'm not alone in that. It's a wonderful thing about our system is that being good constituency MPs means that we are very responsive to what's going on the ground in a way that, by the way, most other finance ministers around the world don't have that connection.
In a way that I'm even asking you this question, that because you're wealthy, somehow you might not be in touch. Do you find that, does that grate with you a bit?
No, it's entirely expected in this job, so it's a perfectly reasonable question for people to ask.
I just, one more thing. You've gone from head boy, you were head boy, weren't you? Yes. To hedge fund, to Chancellor. You're pretty successful. You've always been at the top of your game, it seems to me, and it always looks quite effortless as well, although I'm sure it's not. What's the one thing that you've got really badly wrong in your life?
Oh gosh, I think we've only got about 10 seconds left, haven't we? So there's a long list of things. But no, I mean, look, the thing that is hardest for me is balancing, like everyone, is like juggling your professional and your personal life. It's juggling your career and your family. And it's trying to be, I want to be the best possible person I can in this job, because a lot of people are counting on me to do a really good job, and that's a big responsibility. There's a lot of challenges. And at the same time, I'm still a dad and I'm still a husband, and being good in those roles is also really important to me, and candidly it's a constant struggle
so you
to get
feel
that
like
right.
You don't see the girls enough.
So that is probably the biggest thing that I don't
what's your
don't
biggest
get right.
setback though? Have you ever had a setback?
I've had plenty. Everyone has had plenty. On a daily basis, I'm confronted with the fact that I can't ever in this job do all the things that people would like me to do, and I have to deal with that every single day. I have to every single day know that, God, I can't solve all the problems that people want me to, no matter how many hours, and I'm prepared to put in quite a lot, and no matter how many I put in, right, I can't solve all those problems. I can't protect everybody against everything that is coming their way, and of course I have to go to bed every night knowing that. And during the crisis I was worried that we'd have millions and millions of people without a job, and because of the actions that we took, that thankfully didn't happen, but so things like that happen all the time. That's what I'm grappling with day in, day out.
Stressful job. Yeah. Once when Boris Johnson was asked about his leadership ambitions, he said, if the ball came loose from the back of the scrum, which it won't, of course, it would be a great, great thing to have a crack at it. Is that your position too? Well,
actually, the PM is more a rugby fan. I'm much more a cricket and football fan. So, I don't know what the appropriate analogy is. But look, as we've talked about, at the moment, there's a lot going on. There's a big job to do, and I'm fully focused on doing that job and trying to do it as well as I can.
But if that cricket ball came at you, would you catch it?
At this point, I'm just trying to, stay at the crease and keep them, keep in place and not get out.
If the football was at your foot, would you try and score a goal?
I know we're stretching these analogies too far.
I know.
No, again, I've managed to do more cricket nets than I've played football in the last year. So it's my one bit of relaxation now, then, go and do the odd cricket net. So.
Okay, Rishi Sunak, thank you very much.
Very nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.